All right, good afternoon. My name is Colin Diaz, for those of you that I don't know, but I think I know most of the people on here. President and CEO of the Culver City Chamber, and thank you for joining us for our eighth, and that is correct, eighth weekly COVID-19 Business Roundtable. For those of you that are new to our call, it's an opportunity to connect with some council members as well as members of our city and the Chamber to talk about pertinent items as it relates to COVID-19. I just realized I somehow changed my name, so let me see how I did that, why I did that. But with that, I will turn it over to, let's see, we will start with, usually we start with the council update, so I'll start with our Mayor Eriksson and then go to Councilmember Small.
Well, hey everyone. Not much is changing in our city now. We're sort of in a calm period in a sense, but as you all might have known or listened to earlier today, Governor Newsom said that he intends to give out a recommendation to go to stage 2 with regards to opening up the city. What stage 2 means, and it was pretty detailed, but in short term, non-essential manufacturing, schools, childcare facilities, retail business for curbside pickup, and then offices where remote working is not possible. But there will be modification. He indicated there will be modification, and the written recommendation will not come out probably for 2 days. The LA County then has a choice to follow or to hold back a little or move quicker. My personal guess is that LA County is going to hold back a little. I don't know if you know this, but half of all the people that have died so far in the state of California has done that in LA County. So we still are a little more affected than a lot of other places. So we as a city are looking at the state's recommendations and are also coordinating with the county and the LA City. As you have noticed before, is that we usually follow what LA City and LA County does to make it easier for everyone. So it's not a big difference when you drive north and south of Venice. So whatever orders are going to come out from LA County and LA City, we will most likely adopt most of them, if not all. Other than that, the city has also formed a two task forces. One task force is for internal issues. How do we open up City Hall, and how do we going to run different functions that have a lot of public interaction, like, you know, cashier and planning and so on, when we open up. So there is a group that's been working for about 2 weeks, how to open up City Hall and related services that the city have. But there is also a new group being formed last week, and that is to look at what we as a city can assist with to help businesses open up, and what rules and regulation we might want to change, adapt. And Elaine is heading up that group, so I'm sure she's going to talk more about that, so I'm not going to steal her thunder anymore. With that, I'm going to leave the rest to my friend Thomas Moll.
Well, I think the mayor did an admirable job of being very concise and getting all of the details in, you know, on the legal aspects of our opening up, because we really will be following that system that he described. You know, to me, this week feels like a particularly confusing one with you know, figuring out what everyone's thinking in terms of opening up and getting back to business, because there are just these forces pushing different directions, and we're not getting the greatest guidance from the federal level. But I think you know, we're following it as best we can, and Goran's summary was excellent. So I'll pass it on and be eager to hear from Elaine when we get to her issue.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Councilmember Small. Wanted to, I guess, transition it to either Todd, Elaine, or Elizabeth. Anybody from Econ Dev that would like to share a little bit more about the city perspective?
Elaine, why don't you go ahead? I suspect the listeners are most excited to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Well, so this is a work in progress. We're actually going to be bringing it to City Council on Monday to get full authority to move forward with it. But it's an economic recovery task force that's going to be comprised both of city staff and key community stakeholders, including members from the chamber, local businesses, and nonprofits. And it's really going to be focused in on looking at rebuilding with an equity lens to make sure that we're addressing all economic segments of the community, especially some of our vulnerable members and displaced individuals. So there are some proposed areas of focus, but again, until we go to City Council and we have a more robust discussion, they're pretty limited. We're kind of following suit into what Santa Monica has proposed. They've proposed a very aggressive recovery plan. They announced it last week at their meeting. I'll be listening in tomorrow regarding their kind of how they're financially approaching the task force. But some of the elements that they're very focused in on that we may want to replicate have to do with making sure that we retain the businesses that we have, that we assist them in the reopening process once we get more direction from LA County and the CDC, that we sincerely look at modifying requirements and allowing more flexibility and configurations on how businesses reopen, whether that be retail, restaurants, offices, to make sure that it can be done safely. I think our focus will always be public health. But we also want to make sure that we're doing this responsibly and that people can feel safe, not only the customers, but the individuals and the employees that go back to work feel safe. We're going to want to look at really what community economic development looks like, which could be potentially job fairs, or it could be individual assistance to help those that have been out of work now for 8 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it may be, find new employment. But we also need to, on the LAEDC call today, we need to understand, and we won't really know until we've gotten some guidelines from the county about what the reopening looks like. Are restaurants going to 50%? Are they going to 25%? All that will affect the amount of employees a business retains or needs to retain. We're certainly going to be looking, potentially at a communications and marketing and messaging strategy as this plan unfolds. And as we're doing now, we're going to continue to be a resource relative to federal and state resources, and trying to make sure that we're leveraging the programs that are already existing and anything new that comes out. Liz has been doing a great job with that. So those are the things that Santa Monica is working on. There are several others that I'm doing research on this week, primarily really just looking at the best practices so that we can talk about those at council. So I encourage anyone with great ideas to reach out. Certainly participate in a council meeting on Monday, and we're going to move this forward very quickly.
Thank you. Todd or Elizabeth?
Well, I think Elaine just said it all. I don't have really anything to add other than we're here for all of you. City staff is, as I've been saying, weekly, we're available on a one-on-one case basis to assist businesses with the latest resources or programs that are out there, countywide, statewide, SBA. So we have our business resource hotline as well as our email that we're available to answer those questions. We are, and so bear with us if we don't call you right away. We're trying to get at it within 24 hours, but we're trying to do our best right now. So I appreciate everybody's patience.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Todd, anything else to add?
No, sir. I'm good. They've covered it. Thank you.
Did you want to mention at all about the LAEDC?
Nothing much to report there. This morning they spent time discussing on how, the federal funds had been distributed initially unfairly, and that, there had been some lobbying and some participation that went in that's, made the second round a bit more equitable. they did during the call allude to the fact that LA County may not follow the state's lead, and in fact may modify, what businesses are allowed to open and when and to what extent. So that's I just want to make sure that's clear. That's still quite a bit of an unknown, and I think other than that, that was about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So sharing from the chamber perspective, last week we had a COVID-19 relief program review, if you will. So you'll remember that we had a webinar a few weeks ago when the programs had first become available. And we had a recap because 2 weeks ago, the programs ran out of funding, both PPP and EIDL. There has since been additional money that has gone into supporting both of those. So last week, PPP opened back up for people to apply to, and as of an hour ago, the EIDL portal has opened up again as well. So for those of you that have not or need to go back on to apply for EIDL, you can go back to the normal channels, and if you give me a second, I'll post it in the chat box, but you should be able to go through now and apply for EIDL as well. And just one of the things that was highlighted in our meeting was that the big difference between EIDL and PPP is the fact that EIDL represents, EIDL is for the basically cash infusion, if you will, or money to assist with capital expenses, whereas the PPP is specifically geared towards employees and keeping some funding there. So I posted the EIDL link. If you were to copy and paste that into your web browser, that'll take you right to the application page. It's a pretty seamless application, not too detailed as far as application. So moving forward, things that we have this week. On Wednesday of this week, we have a webinar. It's a speaker series through our Women in Business Council, and it's adjusting to the new normal. So we have 3 speakers, including Lori Sewell, who is the CEO of Servicon Systems, Inc., and they are a local janitorial-based or sanitation-based company that works in aerospace and with larger organizations. They're actually in Culver City on Landmark and are one of our larger employers in town. And so she'll be on the panel. Gene Freeman, who is the principal and CEO of Zambezi, which is an advertising agency on Jefferson, will be part of the panel. And then Akasha, who's the chef and owner of Akasha's restaurant, will also be on the panel. And that'll be a moderated discussion with Kristen Kavanaugh from Sony, who's also the Chamber Board Chair this year. So if you have not been able to register for that or would like to, you can go onto our website. The information is there. It's free to attend thanks to our sponsors in Cedars and Ehrlich and I, Ree and Cheney. Additionally, one thing I forgot to mention about the PPP that is different this round than last round, and Todd, if I'm off on this, you can correct me, but they mentioned on the LAEDC calls that already through 1 week of funding for PPP this go round, there's been more funding in LA than there has through the entire first round. And a large piece of that is because 60 billion of that has gone to local credit unions and smaller institutions, specifically with the emphasis to be able to be accessible to smaller businesses. So wanted to point that out. And then those that are in the queue for EIDL, if they should have gotten a notification recently that said that at least their application is being reviewed. If they have not, then you would want to apply again now that it's available. A couple of other things. The chamber I'd mentioned before is part of the Save Small Business Coalition, which is a coalition of a little over 100 chambers, but we've partnered with a few other larger organizations to form American Recovery Fund Coalition, which started Its official launch was this morning, but we've been working through branches of Congress and Senate and 21 different states. And there are 2 pieces of legislature that are on both floors right now, and they're specifically to bridge the gap that EIDL and PPP have in the way of how it supports the recovery process. So one of them, the one that is in the House, is the COVID-19 Recovery Fund, which essentially is going to provide additional liquidity and enable employers to register the market or re-enter the market as quick as possible. And then on the Senate side is the Workplace Recovery Act. Very similar, there's some differences, but these are 2 pieces of legislature that through our coalition we've been able to move forward. And so we're confident it won't be in the next week or so. They're probably going to be revisiting this the early stages of next week, but within the month of May, we're confident that there's going to be a sizable amount of money put towards specifically restarting the local economies and less on, or not less, but different from the EIDL and PPP programs. And then the last item before we kind of shift to the Q&A, we've started about a month ago our local economic recovery task force with stakeholders that are in different parts of the city, geographically, different industries. And we will have our second meeting later this week with those stakeholders. And you heard Elizabeth mention, or actually you heard Todd mention, that there's a function in the city as well. Excuse me, our mayor mentioned that, and that Elaine is heading, and so we'll be collaborating efforts there, because our whole purpose of our efforts is to streamline the process of recovery and identify the needs that we need to address before that can take place in Culver City. So I was going to mention what the governor announced earlier, but our mayor mentioned that as well. So I will start to cycle towards some of the questions. The first one that I have listed is, can we get data from the city on where the main source of infection is coming from here in Culver City? And I'll open that.
I can try to take that. We know, well, we know generally, where the infections are occurring. They're throughout the city. It's entirely random. Colin, what I'll do is I can try to provide you a graphic here that maybe you can share. It's a very high level, just a map, and it shows generally in the city, where those infections have occurred.
Okay. Next question is, let's see, will the city offer grants, funding, loans, or microloans for small businesses or 501c4 organizations?
I guess I can try to take that one as well. There just aren't revenues available right now, and unless the city council directs staff otherwise, the intent, at least now, is to keep delivering basic services with the funds that are available. That's it.
Okay, another one in addition to, so outside of funding, is the city for 501c3 organizations looked at any rebates, city venue use credits, donation, sponsorship, or matching programs as far as community grassroots community grassroots or city supported endeavors?
Todd, let me try to answer. This is Saul. We're looking at some of those possibilities. As I think, as the mayor pointed out, we've got an economic recovery task force that the city's putting forward, and those are the kinds of things that the task force is going to be looking at.
Okay, thank you. Another question. What will be the process for selecting task force members through the city? Sounds like it may have already been done, but I guess what was the process?
No, I'm sorry. Let me jump in there too, Colin. So this is Saul again. The city staff have been identified, and as the mayor pointed out, Elaine's going to head that up. And Todd and I and current planning will provide support, as will other staff members. So the staff portion has been identified, but the actual stakeholders outside of the city have yet to be determined.
Okay.
So and we think that'll be part of the council discussion next week.
The discussion will be who's going to be selected, or how the process will be to select people?
I think it may be a little of both, Colin.
Okay, and have the roles at least been, you may not know this yet, but have the roles that you want to see represented on that task force been identified, or will that be part of the discussion as well?
That's part of the discussion too.
Okay, thank you.
So Colin, one additional item, we are working to organize a call with you to speak to the nonprofit community about, what's going on in the city, and to better understand, what it might be we can do collectively to assist them. And understanding it's not monetarily, but our hope is there are other things that we can identify and we can introduce to assist. And that call will be coming up probably, I don't know, in the next week and a half, likely, maybe 2. We're working on it now.
Okay, and so a couple of other
Colin,
questions. Yes, sir.
Yes, I don't think we should let the business community have hopes about financial support. We currently looking at shortfall this year that's primarily is coming from March and this quarter that we are in right now. So by end of June, we will be short somewhere between $16 to $20 million. We have already cut $9 million in capital improvement project spendings that were scheduled to happen now. That's been just cut. So what the city is really looking at is what we can do in non-monetary assistance. There can be certain temporary changes with regards to certain rules and how to use public spaces or other things like that, where we can assist, but it doesn't carry a cash outlay. It carries staff time, but not cash outlay. So I don't want anyone to have hopes that the city is going to be able to have a financial support program coming online. If we're lucky, yeah, but I wouldn't count on that. As a business person, that is not something you should count on.
Thank you. So a couple other questions, and if there's others that people have, please submit them into the chat box. One of them was in regards to the orders and updates that have taken place. So I know last week, I want to say on Friday, there was supplemental order 9, which had some clarification for Culver City. And the suggestion or question was, is there a way to number the various items that are in the order so that when there's updates, it becomes easier to reference? Because what's happened so far is it might be pulled out as a paragraph, but if it was, number 2.3, similar to how it is in the civil code, that might be a little bit easier for businesses or people just in general to navigate through. Is that something that's feasible for the city to do moving forward?
Hey, Colin, this is Elaine. So the communications team, at least on their weekly or their daily updates, which are now Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, usually whenever we announce that there's an additional order, they summarize what the changes are to the order. I can ask whether or not we can put, specifically as a subsection or a reference where those changes are happening. But for most people, it's just letting them know, you know, hey, now 10 people are allowed to be at funerals, or there's been some changes to the real estate showing and transactions. So I don't know if it would be specific enough for that, but maybe that's something we can do for you as the chamber, and you can disseminate. Okay,
appreciate that. Next question. Is there any way to coordinate, so is there any way to coordinate the various economic recovery task force efforts? I'm assuming that would be in regards to the efforts that we've had for the last month or so and the efforts that the city is putting on. So I can weigh in, but I'll let, if Todd or Saul or even our mayor would like to start.
Well, okay, I'll jump in. I'll start. You know, I think that's part of the focus, trying to figure out what state and federal resources are out there and how to be a better how to provide better communication about what's out there. That's of course what the chamber's been looking at doing as well. But also we're trying to get our arms around how to be more responsive. So as the mayor pointed out, we might be able to modify the way we do business with respect to outdoor dining or use of the public way. You know, it's those things that we can provide help with. So we'll try to do coordination among the various divisions and departments that make up the city. We'll also look at funding availability, and Elaine's going to be looking at that more deeply and how to coordinate that. There may be grants, and if there are grants, then we'll figure out how to capture those. Elaine, do you have anything else to add there?
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, I will add one thing, which is the chamber is going to be part of the task force, obviously. And so, you know, as we put this together with internal city staff and with external stakeholders, you know, we want to make this nimble, flexible, effective. But so if there are a few members or a couple of members from the chamber that represent your efforts that can inform ours and that we can collaborate and make sure that they align, that's probably what we would be looking at.
Okay, yeah, I think that might have been along the lines of what the question was, because I would hate for your part or our part to duplicate efforts when ultimately you're trying to get to, I would imagine, to hear the same voice that we're already engaging. So you have my support with that as far as being involved and including any other members that make sense to do that.
Absolutely. I think it's about information sharing and collaboration and making sure that Culver City recovers and continues to be successful.
Thank you. So this next
Colin,
question.
Colin, can I just make a comment on that?
Sure.
You know, I think that Kristen's question is an excellent one, and it's really something that, you know, that at a high level, it's something really that the mayor and the council and Colin are really in an excellent position to make sure happens, particularly you know, Goran in his position as mayor and also being so well tied into the chamber and the business community. I think that's where you know, having the communication from that level and making sure that everything is aligned and that efforts aren't going in different directions. I think that's what kind of what Kristen's question gets at. It's an excellent question. I think it's something that we all need to keep in mind of constantly as we participate in these various different recovery back to work task forces and efforts.
Thank you. Another question, this one might be directed to our mayor, or at least I'll start with him. So the stay-at-home or safer-at-home order is set to expire or extend on the 15th. Since you're having a little bit of higher level conversations, any insight as to when you might hear from LA County as their response? I know I think you said earlier that you imagine they'd have a response in the next couple of days.
There's really two aspects. One is the governor's order, or not an order, it's a recommendation, because it's still local authority that decides. But last week on Friday, I was on a call with with the LA Health Department, and at that time, plan was that May 15 will actually, the current stay-at-home order will expire, but there will be adjusted or amended or somewhat changed new order put in place. So it will not be the way that the Bay Area did, where they basically extended what they had. So this will be a modified order that will come, and we will probably know details around that beginning next week. So a couple of days before the May 15, so we know what's coming.
Thank you. And there was a question that asked any update on the possible decrease in commercial rent by 25%. I can speak to that, although I'm not 100%. And if you'd like to expound on the question, you can. What was being talked about at the state level for a while was a potential reduction of 25%, but that was tied to residential and not commercial. That was an assembly bill through Ting up in San Francisco. But what I've gathered lately is that is probably not going to be moving forward. But that's all I know right now. I was not aware of one that was tied to the commercial side as well, but I could be wrong. But I know that the assembly bill that Ting was trying to move forward was tied specifically to the residential side. So hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions that did not get asked yet, or that people would like to, did not get answered yet and would like to pose now? One last thing that I will say, if you have not had an opportunity to go on and take our survey, it's our second survey. This one is centered around recovery efforts. I would highly encourage you all to do so. I will go and put the details of it in the chat box so that you can copy the link and be able to go ahead and take the survey. But this is going to allow us to better inform not only our efforts, but the city and council's efforts towards what recovery would look like for individual businesses, business sectors, and collectively. So with that, with no other questions, thank everybody for joining us. Again, we will have our Women in Business event on Wednesday, something that will start in another week. We're working with Servicon Systems to put together a webinar series, of which the first one will be how to manage cleaning and sanitation in your business post-COVID-19, because that's obviously going to be a pretty prominent topic moving forward, but we'll have more details on that to come. So thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of your Monday.
Colin, I'm sorry, could I ask one question?
Sure.
I'm sorry I didn't ask it earlier. And this is primarily for Councilman Small and Councilman Eriksson. When do you think the various city boards and commissions will be able to start meeting again? You know, we have the budget coming up, and sitting on the Finance Advisory Committee, it'd be helpful, and I think it'd be great to have the Financial Advisory Committee to be able to weigh in on that. But it's a little bit tough, I think, with the mechanism. So when do you think that might be possible?
Well, with regards to the Finance Advisory Committee, that's actually something that I know staff been looking at because of the budget discussion. So whenever we figure out a way to start it up, if nothing else, just being a phone and similar that we do with the council. But that's one of the board's commissions that we're looking at that would be good to get going. I know Planning Commission has had meetings, at least one, I think, online, so to speak. So we are trying to slowly get commissions and board and committees going, and really it's by priority what we think is advice or actually decision by the Planning Commission that's needed to do to actually move the world forward.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, JT.
It was along those same lines. I was wondering how the internal departments like the Planning Commission is moving forward, since we're just starting with our permits and uses and things like that. Are those things going to be moving, or are we going to be stopped completely? And should we expect to move forward because we're starting to build in the ice arena soon?
I think your audio froze, but it sounded like what you're asking is how soon normal functions of city departments would start to restore, which I'm sure is part of their internal task force conversation.
It is.
I wonder if Todd can address that.
Sure. So, well, either one. So the services have never ceased. We're continuing to review plans and issue permits and do inspections remotely. And the internal study that we're performing now is how to get staff back in City Hall, and we maybe at some point can begin face-to-face meetings again. But I can tell you, with the planning commissions and the finance advisory committee, when I think it's going to be some time until we're able to get large groups of people together in the same room again. So the meetings, when conducted, will likely be virtual. We're continuing to refine that internally. I think we're getting much better. You'll see for yourselves Monday night during the city council meetings. Those are going very well. So expect that as the norm going forward. But back to the question, yes, if your permits will not be delayed. We are implementing those, and we will deliver the permits you need. If there are issues, or if you have questions, or if you need to interact with staff, you'll need to do that, virtually.
Yeah, that's fine. Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? All right. With that, I will thank everybody for their time on this Monday, and hopefully it's a productive week, and look forward to seeing you next Monday, if not sooner.
Fantastic, Colin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.